Well, hello and welcome. So I'm just going to talk about how to go about creating successive auxiliary views. So, this is kind of an archaic art, let's be honest, but, it seems like there's not a lot of content out there for this, so I'm just going to talk about it. The idea is usually you have an auxiliary view so that you can go and detail a part true to size, so like when we're looking at the one we're going to do today, the idea is the whole reason that you're doing an auxiliary view is so you can get dimensions of the oblique face true to size. So, if I were to go and dimension this part, I could get some of the values correct, but the idea is that they're elongated in most views. So if you want to get that true to size value, the ideal way to go about that in 2D applications is to get that auxiliary view. So essentially, this view right here, where you're looking at the face perpendicular to it. So, like your eyes would be essentially here looking at it. So everything you see is accurately represented. And essentially, like in a case like this part here, what you will make is one view, like this one, the primary auxiliary view. And then from it, you will make the secondary. And the idea is because of this face being so oblique in a peculiar way, you can't just make one auxiliary view and it be correct. You have to do 2 or 3 depending on I guess what it is, but in this case, the first view, every one of these points that makes up this kind of Pac-Man shape is aligned to be one edge, and then for your next view you project that edge to be the full view. It makes sense, but it's a long strenuous process. So I took the liberty of going ahead and drawing some of this. And I will go and delete most of this, but I wanted to show what the idea is. So essentially, you will project down from these 3 parallel edges, and we'll create the first view. And then from there, I will copy it over and just show this line to say translation. And then work on the second view, which is a lot more complicated, but honestly, the whole process is really not that bad. To give a little backstory, before I do that was a wrong tab. In a technical drawing book, you have this, and ironically they give you a kind of similar part just to give you vibes, but the idea is simple, although it doesn't look simple. So when you're looking here, you have this random YY, you have all these lines coming down, and you can tell that this line is perpendicular to the edge that they're projecting from, okay? So essentially what they do is they choose a reference line and they have a value from that line to each point labeled, which they're not all labeled here, but and in your first view, the way you locate these after you project them all down, as an extension of each edge, is you use the widths up here. So as you can see, essentially the overall width of that view equals the overall width of this view. A equals A. And say, if you had more detail, essentially be the same. So like from, x to 3, you see it's also x to 3 here. Same with x to 1, 2. You have x to 1, 2. So the idea is literally, you're pretty much just drawing a bunch of lines and more or less connecting the dots, giving, just a few widths in here as needed. And then from there, essentially you use this edge and again, offset and basically have a perpendicular line from it. And the reference you use for how far to offset these is essentially the same measurements you use here. So like from, and it's weird because they don't have like a perfect line here. Like in mine, I always do the line like right here, but they're using Y. So even though it's in the middle part, they would essentially go, from this corner, which doesn't have a label, but assume, 1A or something. So from here to Y is the offset value they would use from wherever their starting line is. Which is here, actually, I see it now, to there. And that's the idea. Essentially, you literally use that reference value and use it to offset. And essentially, then you just make a bunch of connections from those. So for me, what I do is I draw circles and at each point to keep it clean, and then just connect the dots later. It's a lot easier to see it in practice, so we'll go ahead and jump into it. But I'm going to go ahead and just delete all of this just so we can do it fresh. And then I'll just bring it back after. That way, you can kind of see the process. And I'm going to keep my little cheat sheet down here of this view because it is easy to mess up this kind of stuff. This is where I would advise, if you don't have a copy, maybe model it in 3D. This is a simple DWF here, but with this, you can generally look at it, turn on your edges, and then play with it. Now, when I modeled mine, for some reason it shows like this strange random edge. If I did shade with edges here, you would see like it puts a random edge, but you get the idea still. And the idea essentially is this. So you have a view like this, and then you're going to pivot it, keep on pivoting until all of these points here are one edge. And then in addition to that, the entire back face is just one edge. So we will end up with a shape about like that. It's not perfect, but that's the idea. Minus the slant here, you're going to have a view just like this. So, it doesn't hurt to have a 3D copy though. So I'm just going to go ahead and fire up AutoCAD again. And okay, so the idea, I mentioned that you needed a reference point. In the book, it was YY and did it through the middle. Well, that's a pain. So let's not do that. I'm going to delete this too. So the idea is you need your line that everything's based off of to be perpendicular to this. An easy way I do this is I just copy one of those slanted lines. I do a rotate, grab the center, and just do 90 degrees. And then you can just move the middle to the furthest corner like this. And continue that same path of just, relatively mindless work. I will then extend this out. Okay, so from here, you can do a lot of things, but what I usually do is I will take the furthest extent, turn on perpendicular snap, and find wherever it's perpendicular. So there we go. Okay. And from here, we can copy. And what we're going to do is paste it at every point you see. So 8 and 14 is 1 point. 7 and 6 will be the same projection path, so we'll click this one. But make sure to turn off perpendicular at this point. Perpendicular and intersection should both be off because otherwise you're probably going to mess this up. There's so many points and overlaps. What ends up happening is you blow it. So we don't want to do that and have to rework. And essentially, as you can see, I'm still just going along and copying and pasting those in. And then I will change these to something a little different so it's not so hard to see what's going on. But do note, same thing applied, everywhere. 5, 4 is one line, so we'll do one line. These 2 points are one line. And to further accentuate that, you have like 2, 12 here. Well, I've marked those as 2 and 12. And I even made a little infographic. So because it's so in-depth, you really need to label your points. That's the easiest way to go about this. So I actually, took the time and kind of showed, just for instance, so you can see that a lot of times the edges do line up, and in one view, you're having multiple points in the same, the edge is essentially a point. So, I didn't do the best numbering scheme here, but you get the idea that 2, 12 in the front view are 1 point, and 3 and 13 in the front view are 1 point, 1 and 11. And the same could be said with the top view. You've got like 14 and 11 would be 1 point, 10, 13 would be 1 point, and so on, But it's good to have a reference of that. And yeah, so essentially what we're going to do from here is choose an arbitrary value. So, for our fold line or our cutting line, whatever you want to call it, line of inflection, whatever. Essentially, I chose to be at the very end of the part. So from here to this point is 0, and then the rest, are varying values. But from here, we can offset however far we want, and I'll just do like 2, I guess. See how far that is? Yeah, we'll do 2. And then from here, this is going to be our first edge. So I will make it object. And then naturally, if I were to go and take the effort and see, I would know that this is 1.76. So now I would just go and offset, whoops, the other side, and we have the extents of our object. From there, we'll just extend all of this out. And it's up to you at this point how you go about it. A lot of times what I'll do is trim all this and then just draw the projection lines back just to make it easier. But it's up to you. So then we have this back width, which is 0.76. So what I'm going to do is offset 1 from the front. Okay, so immediately we can start working on closing the shape out. And it all starts with filling out by edges. So, I mentioned points. So think about if you were to draw what would be, I'll open any other view. If you were to go about drawing this right here would be these 2 points here, which is 1, 2. Okay, so knowing that, I'm going to try to put it back. So knowing that, we can use that same kind of concept and just start filling out these edges. So we know that 1, 2 is this line and they connect. So we're good there. And obviously this edge is going to be a complete straight line all the way through because it's the bottom. And we can see that there, that it's full length. So what I will do is trim. Go ahead and change this to object line. And then we know that right here at 212, it shifts to a deeper L shape. So we know that it must, at this intersection, need to be trimmed. So we'll trim that. And we can go ahead and change this to object. Okay, so now we've got most of the bottom already, actually. I did miss a line, I see, actually. I'm going to copy this. Got to have one for this 313 right here. Okay, so naturally, the bottom can only be from here to here, so we know that the end of this L must come to right here. So I can go ahead and trim this. And I don't know how long this has been a thing, but I noticed lately in another thing I was teaching that if you zoom into the part good enough and then trim, it'll trim all of the excess usually. It didn't in that case, so that's depressing. But take note of that. Anyways, it does work usually. Okay, so we've got the bottom. So now, I mentioned that 4, 5, 8, 7, 9, 10, 6, they're all in line. So we just need to go to the very first part of the slant, which is 4. So from 4, we can connect all the way to 9, 10. And 9, 10, of course, is over here. So I can literally just connect the dots. Which I'm not getting in. Oh, I don't have intersection on. So at this point, turn intersection on just for this. Find that intersection, turn it back off. Trust me on the intersection thing. I love intersection, but it doesn't work here. Okay, so then from this back edge, not sure what happened there, but I need to extend it. I think I trimmed the wrong line earlier. That might have been what happened. Okay, so from that back edge, we can go ahead and make this a hidden line because naturally, you won't be able to see that in the back. So I can just go ahead and trim that, and I'm going to start tidying up a bit so it's not so convoluted in here. And we don't need this one anymore. We don't need this either. Yeah, pretty much done at this point. So I can go ahead and trim all of this. And yeah, so that would be our first view. And essentially what you have, like I said, is a perfect edge for you to project from. Makes sense. And, naturally the only values that you could actually take and translate from other views would be these, the widths, which is what we drew with. So keep that in mind. So then from here, what I would do, typically, like I said, I like to keep all my projection lines there so you can see them. But then copy it and just translate it perfectly horizontal, whatever value, to give you some room to draw. Because when you draw this, what you're going to end up with, I'll show you the inventor side. You're going to end up with this big hucking view here. And naturally, it's going to take up a lot of real estate. So what you're going to want to do is definitely shift it over. And usually what I do to indicate that is I will just draw using that same line, whatever layer I use for that inflection line. I'm going to use the same here, and that says basically this was moved there for clarity, whatever. But I'm going to go ahead and close this, and then I'll reopen the one I was actually doing earlier. Okay, so got everything projected. You can see it a little better here. I even went ahead and labeled the points for convenience, So if you're not sure what goes where, here's a good chance to look at everything. You know, it matches up pretty well to what you're seeing there. And then, yeah, so translated it over. And then what I went ahead and did, which, you know, same concept as the last one, to make this edge, just, you know, offset whatever value you want. And then from here, we will be using the dimensions from this edge to each point as we would from this edge to each point. So, you know, like for instance, 3 and 13, they will literally be touching this line. Whereas, you know, from here to 10, that'll be the distance from here to 10. So it's pretty straightforward as far as the translation values go. But one thing I want to mention, you should not be measuring and entering any values. This is all projections, so you will be doing offsets and you will use references to do that. If you enter anything, when you're measuring it, you will have a round off and it will end up being incrementally wrong. And we don't want that. So the whole idea of this archaic, kind of really cool method is you're really not doing a lot of numbers. You're basically drawing these two views with numbers. And then the rest, you know, you're doing based on projections. So, but one thing I would suggest, so, you know, do your little offset for your line that you're going to use for reference. Go ahead and connect perpendicular lines to it everywhere. And again, only turn perpendicular on to do this. And once you have it set up like this, you can start offsetting. And then I would say lay out some circles with point numbers. That way you can keep up with what you're doing. And you'll see why, like, immediately. So let's get into it. So I'm going to start, I don't know why. I'm going to start on the right. Okay, so I'm going to do from my reference to 10. Okay, and so what I did there, I guess I should mention that. So I did offset, and it's a specified distance. And what I'm doing is actually choosing, you know, the distance from there to there, and it'll use it as a reference. And again, if you do not have, if you do have perpendicular on, turn it off, because it'll usually grab perpendicular, and you can't tell, but it's usually just barely wrong. And the same applies to intersection, so make sure it's off. So I'm going to offset, and this will be 10. Now, the way it works here is I need to extend, you know, 10 essentially, and it would be right there. But obviously, since I don't need to do that, you know, technically to know where I'm at, I will just place it because it's an end piece. But on these later ones, what you'll need is to extend whichever one to it, find the intersection, and put it. So I'm going to move 10 to the end. Okay, so we know that this line here was also 9. So we will do the same thing and find out where 9 is at. So I'm going to grab the ending, go all the way there. Whoop, oh, what happened there? I just jumped across the page. Offset up, and there's 9. Okay, so we've got 9 in place. And now we know that technically right here, even though we're not going to draw it yet, that's this edge, 9, 10. So we could technically connect the dots now, but I'm not going to. And then usually what I'll do is just delete these as we go. And, you know, you're keeping a much clearer workspace now. And you can also keep up with what edges you haven't done since you have a running list here. So it seems silly to do the labels, but it really does help a lot. Okay, so next up, we'll do 6, 7. And what's cool is it really doesn't matter the order at all because, you know, essentially it's doing work for you. So I'm going to do endpoint to endpoint here. Oh, I need intersection now. And again, it's annoying having to constantly toggle this, but it is, you know, for your own benefit to do so. And then we will offset this one. Okay, and that was for 6. So now I need to go and look at which one 6 was. And I guess technically, you know what? Let's go ahead and grab these. I'm going to grab all the labels here, and then I'll just deselect some of the stuff. FYI, if you select everything, you just hold shift and select all the lines and deselect them all. Okay, so what I will do is a copy, and I will grab it from here. Okay, so now we've got those points again. So I'm not gonna lie, I've already forgotten which one that was, so we'll just redo that one. Okay, so we'll do from 6, and then offset, and then we will extend 6. Okay, and we need to move a 6 circle there. And it seems kind of tedious doing it this way, but again, this is really the only way to not have some round off, so it is what it is. I'm going to leave this line here because we're going to have to extend it for 7, which we'll do next. Again, make sure you're getting endpoints and only intersections on these where you need it. And we'll offset it up. Alright, so there's 7. Well, I need to continue extending this a little lad. There we go. 7. Okay, so we're starting to get a little something here. And I'm going to delete these little lines as we go. Eventually what I'll do is I'll draw them back in just to, you know, have projection lines in there, make it easier. But for now, it's easier to check it off by saying, you know, I've done this line, I've done this line. So next we can, let's do number 1. How about that? Okay, so from number 1, it is this much. And because it's on the very end, we can just, you know, without extending here, just move it to the very end point. All right, and there's 1. And then 11 is the same value. So, is it? Oh, no, 11. Okay, so this is where it gets a little tricky, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and do that offset again because I goofed, and do from here to 1 or 11 as you would see it, and essentially offset it again. But the difference is this time we're going to actually have to project from a different point. So I'm going to copy this line here because I forgot this one, and there's 11. Okay, so 11 needs to be extended to that little offset line up there. And this is where 11 will be. That's not 11. It does get a little tricky, but you know, as long as you're really paying attention to every little detail, you should be golden. So now I can delete this and this. 11's good. We're good with 1 as well. And you know, so where you can, if you have one, it's easy. So like we did 111, we can go ahead and connect that because as you can see, that is an edge. So from 1 to 11, I will go ahead and connect the centers. Okay, so keep note, you know, you can do this as you go. So same here, I could go ahead and connect 9 and 10. Okay, is there any more we can connect? Or 6? No. Okay, so we'll keep pushing. All right, so let's do 2. And eventually what's going to happen is you can start completing faces as you go. That's the idea behind it. So we're going to start working on that bottom face pretty good. So now we'll do this 212 value, and this time I'm going to keep it so that we can do it from each edge. You know, we have a 12 and a 2, but the value measurement from here is the same. So, you know, basically here is 2 and 12. So what I can do is extend 2 up, oops, and 12 up, and mark them. Okay, so delete these, and let's see. We can go ahead and close this edge out. Okay, and then 1 and 2 connect. Alright, so it's starting to look like something. We've kind of got this little zigzag here. Yeah, cool. Looking good. Okay, so now we can work on 4, 5. And that'll be from here to here for 4. Okay. Ooh, I didn't erase there. Alright, so there's 4. And then I will go ahead and delete that, and we'll do 5 since it's from the same point. And see what I mean? Make sure you get the end points here. just to be safe. It would really be a pain to have to go back and do this again, you know. Okay, 5 is way out there. And let's see if we can connect 4, 5. We can. Cool. Let's do that. Now, essentially, you know, what you have here is 4, 5. So we can actually go ahead and close out this whole face. Let's do 5, 1, and 4, 2. And this is where it gets fun because you're like, oh man, this is, you know, it's coming together. But there's 5, 1, 4, 2. And just like that, we have our first face. This one right here. So, you know, essentially we can keep plugging along, and let's do 3/13 apparently. Okay. Oh, and it's 0. Duh. Okay. So essentially 3 and 13 will both be right here on the line. And you see now that these points really do come in handy. I mean, it's annoying to make these. It's super pain, but I mean, it is worth it. So, okay. So there's 3 and 13. And I'll go ahead and delete these lines. So now let's do 8. All right, 8. And that value for 8 is the same as 14. And it's way up there. Okay, so let's go ahead and extend the rest of this. And if you notice, this will be our last set to do, actually. Why you no extend? There we go. All right, so 8. And 14. So, just to be clear, 8, 14 is an edge. And I will go ahead and delete this and this. And for the moment, I'm actually going to go and turn off the yellow line. So, I'm just going to turn that off and start connecting some edges. So, 8, 14 is an edge. I will connect that. Okay. 8, 5 is an edge, so I will keep going. 14, 9 is an edge, as well as 8, 9. And suddenly it's already starting to shape up, right? Like it's looking like something. It's because we're basically just connecting the dots, and this is why labeling is nice. Work smarter, not harder, you know? Alright, so 10, 13. And I believe we do 3, 13. Yep. And then we're going to close out here to 3, 12. Alright, so then we need to do 12, 7. Okay, and then let's see, 4, 7 and 7, 6. At this point, you can probably just tell, like, hey, this goes here. This goes here. This goes here. And essentially you're done, you know, just like that. So I'll put this as a hidden line since it's in the back. And I believe that's it. Let's see. Double checking here at my little cheat sheet. Ah, we are missing one more edge. 11, 14. There we go. Now, these circles are kind of in my way, so I'm going to go ahead and change them to my projection layer. Big fan of keeping all the projection lines, just in case, you know, you're ever looking at this way down the road and you're like, oh man, I forgot how to do all this. Well, those lines do help. So keep that in mind. Okay, so there they go. There we go. I can see a lot better. So we've got this face, this face, this face, the back face, the other side face. Yeah, so it's good. Just like that, you know, it's really not as hard as you would think. And then, like I said, if you're doing these, you know, for the sake of class, make it easier on your instructor. Go ahead and draw these lines back in that I was talking about earlier. You know, just connect the dots basically at this point, but it really does make it easier to check these things when you can see it first hand. Make sure everything lines up. Like, sure, AutoCAD does do an overlay that you can use to check things, but being able to check it by eyes is nice. So, you know, just do it. Just do the thing. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and close it out and do all this since we're here. Missing an edge there. All right, so we've got our points. Always miss 11 and 4 and 5, I see. And essentially, you know, you should have one to every circle. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, this applies to any part really. All you have to do is know, you know, that basically you're using that reference line, and try not to have any round off, and generally speaking, you're pretty good to go, you know. It's an old method, but it is really cool to use. Obviously, you can do a lot with it if you need like a 3D thing and you work in a 2D job. And not only that, it's kind of fun. I don't know. But anyway, if anybody has any questions on how to go about these, just let me know.